All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental concepts in all of programming, the object. You can think of it as the ultimate digital organizer for your code. And trust me, by the end of this, you'll see exactly why they're so powerful.
So let's kick things off with a problem I'm sure you've run into. You're building something, and you've got these pieces of information that clearly belong together, like, say, a user's name and their experience level. How do you stop them from just, floating around separately in your code? Well, the most basic way is to just create two separate variables. You've got let name equals Zishan and let experience equals 10. But they're totally disconnected. The code itself has no clue that these two things are related to the same person. And as your app grows, this gets messy, and it gets messy fast. So in this explainer, we're going to fix that. First, we'll cover what an object actually is. We'll call it our digital filing cabinet. Then we'll figure out how to open it up to access and change data. After that, we'll give our objects some actions. And finally, we'll look at how to create a solid blueprint for our data to keep everything consistent.
Okay, so first things first. What even is an object? The absolute best way to think about it is as a container. It's like a digital filing cabinet where you can store all your related bits of information.
Now for the more official definition. An object is a collection of related data and functionality, and it's all stored as something called key-value pairs. Don't worry, we're going to break down exactly what that means right now. And boom, here is the solution. See those curly braces? That's how we create an object. We've called this one teacher, and inside we've bundled that name and experience together. Just like that, everything is neatly organized in one single place.
Let's look at the anatomy of this thing. The key, like name, is just the label, and the value, like Zishan, is the actual piece of data. When you put them together, they form a property. So really, an object is just a collection of these properties. Simple as that. Okay, so we've put our data into the filing cabinet. That's great. But how do we open the drawer back up to read what's inside, or maybe even change it? Let's take a look. Getting data out is super easy. Use something called dot notation. You just type the name of the object, then a dot, then the key you're interested in. So teacher.name gets us the value Zishan. It's that simple.
And changing a value is just as straightforward. First, you target the property you want to change, again with dot notation. Then you use the equals sign. And finally, you just assign it a new value. And just like that, the teacher's experience level has been updated from 10 to 15.
Now, this is a really, really important point. When you use dot notation with that equal sign, you are directly changing the original object. But look at the other side. If you just copy the value into a brand new variable and then change that new variable, the original object isn't touched at all. Getting this distinction right is absolutely crucial.
All right, this is where things get really cool. Objects aren't just for sitting there, passively holding on to data. Nope, they can actually perform actions. They can do things.
And there's a special name for an action that an object can perform. It's called a method. And what is a method? Well, it's just a function that happens to live inside an object as one of its properties.
Check this out. We've added a new property, and we've called it greet.
But look at the value. It's not a string or a number. It's a function. This means our object now has a skill. It can perform the action of greeting someone. This quote from the source material is such a perfect analogy. It just makes sense, right? If you have functions for adding, subtracting, multiplying, well, where do they belong? They belong inside a calculator object. This is exactly how objects help us write code that's logical, intuitive, and way more organized. Okay, for our final section, we're going to level up a bit. We're going to see how we can create a strict blueprint for our objects. This helps us make sure our data is always consistent and always correct. And to do this, we're going to bring in a tool called TypeScript. The blueprint analogy is the perfect way to understand this. A type in programming is just like an architectural blueprint for a house. The blueprint itself isn't the house, but it lays down the rules for what any house built from it must have. 2 bedrooms, 1 kitchen, and so on. So how do we make one of these blueprints in TypeScript? Well, we use the type keyword. Here we're creating a new type called teacher, and inside the curly braces, we're defining the rules. We're saying any teacher object absolutely has to have a name that's a string and an experience that's a number. So our teacher blueprint lays down the law. Any object claiming to be a teacher must follow these rules. The name has to be a string, and the experience has to be a number. No exceptions. This is amazing for catching bugs before they even happen and keeping our data reliable. And here we see it in action. We're creating a new teacher, and notice how we're saying it has to follow the teacher type. And since the object we're giving it has a string for the name and a number for the experience, well, it fits the blueprint perfectly. TypeScript is happy, and our code is much safer for it.
So let's do a quick recap of your new object toolkit. First, objects are for bundling related data together. Second, properties let you store and change the values inside them. Third, methods give those objects actions they can perform. And fourth, types let you create a reliable blueprint to keep it all consistent.
And that's really the big takeaway here. The reason objects are so incredibly powerful is because they let us model real-world things, a teacher, a user, a product, a calculator, directly in our code. And that makes our code so much cleaner, more organized, and frankly, just easier to understand.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have this new tool, what real-world thing are you going to model with an object first? A car? A recipe? Your favorite video game character? The possibilities are endless, and now you've got the toolkit to get started.